Well, thanks, Bill. Reason why I'm thinking it's going to turn colder here, especially as we get in later January, February. We'll take a look at Nino, the El Nino. The El Nino out there right now is pretty weak. It's also centrally Pacific based. Here in Nino 4 is where the warmest temperatures are. Normally El Ninos, we see it warmer over here in the eastern Pacific, but this year it's more central Pacific. That's also coincides with what we call an El Nino Modokai, and that has a definite impact on our weather. It's also a fairly weak Nino right now. You see these values all around 1.0, a little bit less than 1.0. How's the forecast for Nino look going through the rest of the winter? Pretty much going to stay the same, not much stronger down here. Generally at or below 1.0. That's going to be the continuing trend right through winter. The other thing that we want to take a look at is the MJO. The MJO has been very strong this winter and has been a dominant feature in our weather, and I expect that to continue. The European model and the Australian long-range models, which go out into mid to late January, are all indicating the MJO, Madden-Julian Oscillation, to propagate from a phase 4, which is typically a fairly warm phase here in the eastern U.S., toward phases 7 and 8 as we get into later January. Both models are indicating that. Right now, we can definitely see that we are in a phase 4 going phase 5. Next week, here's precipitation anomalies. A lot of wet moisture here across in north of Australia, a little bit in Southeast Asia. That really keys in and coincides with the phase 5, which is where we think we're going. As we progress through early January, we're going to head toward phase 6 and eventually phase 7. And then we head toward phase 8, 1, and back around to phase 2. What's that mean for our temperatures as we go forward? Well, guess what? Phase 8 starts to turn cold. You see phase 5 and 6 are fairly mild. Phase 7, you start to see that warm air start to get knocked down, turning not as warm. Phase 8 starts turning quite cold. Phase 1 is cold. Phase 2 is cold. And in February, phase 3 is cold. You can see right here, here's our current trend with phase 5. Pretty nice match. And here's our expected long-range forecast as we go through mid-January through the end of February. Quite cold here at Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, and most of the eastern U.S. Hey, look at that. Coincides with phase 8, 1, 2, and probably even 3. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it turning much colder here as we go later into January and February. Take that with, or add to that the polar vortex that's possible out there, the sudden stratospheric warming, and you got a recipe here for some colder weather, especially as we go into the climatologically coldest part of our year. So with that all being said, I'll leave it back to Captain Kirk.